As the sunset illuminated Miami's coastline, bathing the white buildings of the upscale neighborhood in a pale orange glow, Martha Johnson sighed deeply while gazing out the kitchen window. She still hadn't fully adjusted to this glamorous city. "Darling," Eleanor mother called to say she's coming over tonight. Richard's voice came from behind, causing Martha to involuntarily tense her shoulders. Richard Campbell was an executive at a major local real estate company, a man respected for his appearance and sociability. He entered the kitchen and planted a light kiss on Martha's shoulder. "Is there any special reason?" Martha asked, feigning composure. "Not particularly. Mother just wants to check on us," Richard answered, taking a bottle of mineral water from the refrigerator. "And she apparently has something to discuss about your pregnancy." Martha unconsciously placed her hand on her slightly swollen belly. 5 months pregnant, she had just entered the stable period. 3 years had passed since she quit her job as a school counselor and married Richard. During that time, Eleanor had never once called her darling. As the matriarch of an old prestigious Miami family, Eleanor oversaw charitable works and wielded enormous influence in social circles. With her conservative Southern traditions, she had from the beginning considered Martha unsuitable for the family. Martha's middle-class background and being just a school counselor were things Eleanor simply couldn't tolerate. "She'll be here by 7. I'm going to take a shower," Martha said with a small smile as she left the room. Staring at her face in the bathroom mirror, Martha recalled the early days of her marriage. She could still remember the cold gaze Eleanor gave her when they first met. "So, you're the one my son chose," with contempt hidden behind the words. Richard always said, "Mother's just a bit old-fashioned. You'll understand once you get used to her," but even after 3 years, nothing had changed. A few hours before Eleanor's visit, Martha meticulously cleaned the house and prepared dinner. When the doorbell rang, her heart was racing. "Good evening, Eleanor," Martha greeted her mother-in-law with the brightest smile she could muster. Eleanor, with perfectly styled platinum blonde hair and wearing an elegant two-piece suit, scrutinized Martha from head to toe as if appraising her value. "Martha," Eleanor replied coldly and briefly. Then she completely changed her tone when addressing her son. "Richard, darling. It's Mother." Richard immediately appeared and embraced his mother warmly. "Mother Eleanor, I'm so glad you came." When the three sat down in the living room, Martha served the herbal tea she had prepared. Eleanor looked at the cup and sighed softly. "I always drink Darjeeling," she said to Martha. "I thought you would have remembered after 3 years together." "I'm sorry," Martha apologized. "I'll be sure to have it ready next time." Eleanor changed the subject. "So, when is my first grandchild due?" "Late January next year," Martha answered, feeling slightly nervous. Eleanor's expression softened for the first time. "I see. A child who will carry on the Campbell bloodline." Richard smiled happily. "That's right, Mother. We're really looking forward to it." However, Eleanor's next words froze Martha's smile. "I've already decided. After the baby is born, I'll move in for a while to help." Martha looked at her husband in surprise, but Richard showed no sign of discomfort. "Eleanor, that's..." As Martha searched for words, Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "Don't worry. I've raised 3 generations of Campbell babies. I have so much to teach you," Eleanor said. "You have no experience as a parent, so you'll need my help." When Martha tried to object, Richard took her hand. "Mother is right. We need the help of someone experienced." Martha couldn't say anything more. Faced with the two of them who wouldn't even listen to her opinion, words caught in her throat. From that day on, Eleanor's visits became more frequent, and she began interfering with everything related to the pregnancy. Baby clothes Martha selected were dismissed as cheap, and parenting books she read were called outdated. Whenever Martha tried to express an opinion, she was shut down with, "You don't know anything." And then the day finally arrived. Hit by intense contractions, Martha was rushed to the hospital. After 12 hours of painful labor, she finally gave birth to a little girl. Exhausted, at the moment she tried to hold her child for the first time, Eleanor entered the room, whispered something to the doctor, and took the baby from the nurse. Avery Campbell. What a beautiful name, Eleanor said as she cradled the baby. But, Martha said weakly, we hadn't decided on a name yet. Eleanor continued to monopolize the baby as if she hadn't heard. Richard stood beside his mother, peering at the newborn. From her hospital bed, Martha could only watch as her baby was being taken away from her. Tears flowed from Martha's eyes as she lay in the hospital bed. Having the joy of holding her baby for the first time stolen left a deep wound in her heart. Amid the pain and fatigue of her C-section, Martha was filled with love for this new life, even as she worried about motherhood. It's feeding time, a nurse said, entering the room. The baby is hungry.
Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too. Link below if you're curious.
Just as Martha rejoiced that the moment had finally come to hold her child, the door opened and Eleanor strode in. I'll hold her. Eleanor took the baby from the nurse without giving Martha a second glance. Martha, I've spoken with the doctor, and I think you shouldn't breastfeed. But I want to breastfeed, Martha said, her voice trembling. Eleanor gave her a cold look. The medication you're taking could harm the baby. I want only the best for my grandchild. Martha was confused. She wasn't taking any medication other than painkillers for the C-section. The doctor didn't say anything like that. In fact, he recommended breastfeeding. Just then, Richard entered the room. What's going on? Richard, your mother is. Eleanor interrupted. Richard, I spoke with the doctor. We should raise her with high-quality formula instead of breast milk. Considering Martha's condition and Avery's health. Richard looked at his mother rather than Martha. Mother has her reasons, Martha. It's for the baby's sake. A sense of despair spread through Martha's heart. During her hospital stay, she had almost no time alone with the baby. Either Eleanor or Richard was constantly in the room, even limiting her opportunities to touch the baby. On the day of discharge, Martha had expected to finally fulfill her role as a mother at home. But reality was different. Eleanor moved in to help as promised and insisted on creating a nursery next to Richard's bedroom. When Martha said she wanted to sleep with the baby, she was dismissed with, "That will create an unhealthy dependency." When the baby cried in the middle of the night, Eleanor would open the door before Martha could get up, saying, "I'll take care of her, you rest." But in the morning, Martha would be criticized. "You're a failure as a mother if you don't wake up when your baby cries at night." 2 weeks after giving birth, Martha's body was gradually recovering, but her heart sank day by day. Her face in the mirror was pale, with large circles under her eyes. She longed for time alone with Avery, but Eleanor's watchful eyes were constant. "Martha, don't hold the baby that way. That milk is too cold. You're not good at changing diapers." Under the constant criticism, Martha's confidence was shattered. When she sought help from Richard, he dismissed her with, "Mother has experience." One day, Martha's phone rang. It was her sister, Jennifer. Martha ran to the bathroom, closed the door, and then answered. "Martha, are you okay? I'm worried about you." Jennifer's voice was laced with concern. She was a successful lawyer and one of Martha's few supporters. "Jenny." Martha's voice trembled. "I don't know what to do anymore." "What happened? Did Eleanor do something again?" Martha quietly explained the situation. How she was prevented from breastfeeding, how her time with the baby was taken away, and how she was constantly being invalidated as a mother. "That's abuse, Martha," Jennifer's voice was stern. "You have rights. You should leave that house right now." "But I can't leave Avery behind." "Of course not. As a lawyer, I can tell you that legally. Suddenly, there was a knock on the bathroom door. Martha, who are you talking to? It was Eleanor's voice. I'll call you back, Martha quickly hung up. That night, Richard took Martha's smartphone. Martha, you haven't been yourself lately. It might be postpartum depression. I'll keep this for a while. You should avoid social media and stressful communications. But before Martha could protest, Richard had taken her phone away. The next day, Martha accidentally overheard Eleanor on the phone in the kitchen. Yes, she's served her purpose now, Eleanor's voice was cold. We'll raise the baby ourselves from now on. Martha is emotionally unstable and can't take care of a baby. Filled with fear and despair, Martha sneaked into Richard's study and found his old smartphone. Fortunately, it still worked. She sent an emergency SOS email to her sister. 3 weeks after giving birth, Martha was finally returning home. Although the C-section wound hadn't completely healed, she was being released from hospital supervision. Despite Eleanor's help being an obstacle, a faint hope had lit in Martha's heart. I can go home. I can start a new life with Avery. The response from her sister Jennifer gave her strength. A message saying, you need evidence. Record their behavior. I'll take action immediately, along with a small IC recorder had been secretly delivered, hidden in the sole of a shoe. Jennifer had visited the hospital as a well-wisher and secretly passed it to Martha. You're all set now, the nurse said, completing the discharge paperwork. Your family is waiting in the car. Outside, Richard was standing in front of a luxury SUV. Welcome home, he smiled gently. Eleanor was already in the car, holding the baby. In the car heading home, Martha gazed out the window and thought, no matter what happens, I will protect Avery. I am her mother. She took a deep breath, feeling the IC recorder hidden in the inside pocket of her cardigan. Martha, I'm glad you're back, Eleanor said in an unusually kind voice. You should rest. We'll take care of Avery. Richard added, that's right. Your health comes first. Mother has arranged everything, so don't worry. When they arrived at the Campbell mansion, there was a small sign at the entrance that read, Welcome home Martha and Avery. Martha frowned at the misspelled name, Avery instead of Avery, but said nothing. Please, come in, Richard opened the door. Entering the living room, there stood an unfamiliar woman. Ms. Martha, nice to meet you. I'm Nancy, the housekeeper hired by Ms. Eleanor. Pleased to work with you. Martha looked at Richard and Eleanor with a confused expression. A housekeeper? I didn't ask for one. Martha, Eleanor said, as if gently reasoning with her. You need rest. Nancy will help with the housework and taking care of Avery. But there's no room for discussion, Eleanor's tone suddenly changed. This is for your own good. Martha felt as if the ground beneath her was shaky. She realized that preparations were being made not for her rest, but for her elimination. She quietly turned on the switch of the IC recorder in her cardigan's inside pocket. May I hold Avery? Martha asked quietly. Eleanor and Richard exchanged glances. When Richard nodded, Eleanor reluctantly handed the baby to Martha. Martha's eyes welled with tears as she embraced her child for the first time in 3 weeks. She gazed at Avery's tiny face, touching her soft cheek with her finger. It's Mommy, Avery. Mommy's here, she whispered. Martha, the way you're holding her puts strain on the baby's neck, Eleanor pointed out from the side. Give her back to me. Martha said firmly, It's fine, Eleanor. I am her mother. I know how to hold my own daughter. The atmosphere in the room suddenly froze. Martha, that's no way to speak to mother, Richard's voice contained a warning. I was just. It's okay, Richard, Eleanor interrupted. I understand Martha's attitude. Her hormones are still imbalanced. Martha took a deep breath. It wasn't wise to provoke her husband and mother-in-law. She needed to focus on gathering evidence now. That night, Martha secluded herself in the bedroom. Avery was taken to a different room, the nursery, next to Richard's study. Lying down after locking the door, Martha fought back tears as she stared at the ceiling. At 2 a.m, she heard the baby crying. Martha jumped up and tried to leave the room, but when she turned the doorknob, it was locked, from the outside. She cried out, "Richard! The door won't open." From across the hallway, Eleanor's voice could be heard. "Don't worry, I'll handle it. You get some rest. Open up. My baby is crying." Martha pounded on the door. 10 minutes later, Richard opened the door. "Martha, what are you doing? Mother has already put Avery back to sleep, and you're making a fuss. Why did you lock the door?" Martha asked, suppressing her anger. "It's dangerous for you to wander around at night. You're not fully recovered yet. I'm not a prisoner. I should have the right to move freely in my own home." Richard placed his hands on Martha's shoulders. "Martha, I'm worried about you. The doctor mentioned the possibility of postpartum depression symptoms. It's for your safety." Those words sent a chill down Martha's spine. They were labeling her as unstable and trying to exclude her from parenting. The next morning, Martha went down to the living room. Eleanor was sitting on the sofa, holding Avery. She seemed to be giving instructions to Richard. "Good morning," Martha said, as cheerfully as she could. "May I hold Avery?" Eleanor's expression changed. She held the baby more tightly and looked at Martha with cold eyes. "You're not needed anymore. From now on, I am the mother." Martha gasped. The words seemed too unreal to believe. She turned to Richard and saw him smiling, a cold, calculating smile. "You were just here to give birth," Richard said matter-of-factly. "Just a birthing machine, that's all." Martha's heart nearly stopped. How could the man she loved and trusted say such cruel words? Making sure the IC recorder was on, Martha asked in as calm a voice as she could muster. "Is that really how you feel? That I'm just a tool?" "Martha, I'm sorry if you're offended," Eleanor put on a false concerned expression. "But you must face reality. You don't have the qualities to be a mother. It's better for Avery if Richard and I raise her." Richard added, "Mother is right. Your mental state is unstable, and if you're thinking of Avery, you should accept this gracefully." Martha silently left the room. Tears streamed down her cheeks. But these weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of anger and determination. Back in her room upstairs, as soon as she closed the door, Martha took out the old smartphone. She sent her sister one message. "Got the recording. Succeeded in making them say the worst. Somehow leaving the house tonight." In the dead of night, when the whole house was quiet, Martha crept down the stairs. She entered Avery's room and picked up her sleeping child. She packed a small bag with the bare essentials for the baby. Before opening the front door, she looked back to see Richard standing at the top of the stairs. "Where do you think you're going?" "For a walk. I feel suffocated." "With the baby? In the middle of the night?" Richard's voice was suspicious. "I am a mother. I have the right to be with Avery." "Martha, stop joking. Give the baby back." Martha put her hand on the front door. "Richard, I know your true nature now, yours and Eleanor's. I won't be fooled anymore." Just as Richard started to come down the stairs, headlights illuminated the front yard. Jennifer had arrived. "What?" Richard walked toward the entrance. Martha quickly opened the door and ran to her sister's waiting car. Jennifer opened the door, inviting Martha and Avery inside. "Hurry!" Jennifer shouted. Richard rushed outside, yelling, "Martha! Come back, but the car was already moving. By dawn, Jennifer's law firm team had worked through the night to prepare emergency lawsuit documents for mental abuse, confinement, and parental rights violations, submitting them to court. Simultaneously, an emergency protection order was requested for Martha and Avery. The next morning, Richard's cell phone rang. It was from an unknown number. When he answered, he heard a calm female voice. "Mr. Campbell, this is Sarah Collins from Winslow and Associates Law Firm. We have sent you and Ms. Eleanor Campbell a litigation notice, so please check." "What?" Richard's voice trembled. When he opened the email that arrived on his smartphone moments later, the attachment contained legal documents labeled Emergency Protection Order Application and Martha Johnson vs. Richard Campbell and Eleanor Campbell. Eleanor rushed into the living room. "Richard, what happened?" "Martha has filed a lawsuit." Richard stammered. He showed his smartphone to his mother. "Mother," she recorded everything. "All our words from yesterday." The color drained from Eleanor's face. "Impossible. That can't be." They quickly contacted their family lawyer, Howard Griffin, who had handled the Campbell family's legal matters for many years. "To be honest, the situation is not simple," Griffin explained with a serious expression in Richard's study a few hours later. "Although the recording was made without permission, Florida is a one-party consent state. This means that as long as Martha herself was a participant in the conversation, it's legally valid evidence." "But we were just joking." Eleanor raised her voice. "The court won't see it that way," Griffin frowned. "Especially expressions like birthing machine and saying she is not needed anymore could clearly be considered psychological abuse. Furthermore, locking Martha's room from the outside raises suspicions of confinement." Richard held his head in his hands. "Can't something be done?" "If we pay." "Richard," Griffin interrupted sharply. "Stop talking about bribes. It will only make the situation worse. There's an emergency hearing this afternoon. That's when they'll decide whether to continue the protection order." That afternoon, in a small courtroom in Miami-Dade County Court, Richard and Eleanor sat tensely. On the opposite side were Martha, her sister Jennifer, and Robert Chen, Jennifer's law school classmate who had become a competent lawyer. "All rise," the court officer declared as Judge Elizabeth Morales entered. "We begin the emergency protection order hearing in the case of Johnson vs. Campbell," Judge Morales said. "Let's first hear from the petitioner." Robert Chen stood up. "Your Honor, our client Martha Johnson has been systematically psychologically abused by her husband Richard Campbell and her mother-in-law Eleanor Campbell. After giving birth, her rights as a mother were violated, and her time with her child was restricted. She was also placed in confinement and cut off from outside contact." Chen submitted the conversation Martha had recorded as evidence. "Your Honor, please listen to this recording." The cold voice echoed in the courtroom. "You're not needed anymore. From now on, I am the mother." Then Richard's words, "You were just here to give birth. Just a birthing machine, that's all." Shocked voices leaked from the gallery. Martha clutched a handkerchief with trembling hands. Jennifer placed her hand on Martha's shoulder, supporting her. This recording clearly shows that the defendants viewed Martha as merely a tool for childbirth, and were trying to strip her of her rights as a mother, Chen continued. Furthermore, while Martha did show symptoms of postpartum depression, they were caused and exacerbated by the defendants' actions. Judge Morales looked at Richard and Eleanor with a stern expression. "Defense counsel, your rebuttal." Griffin stood up. "Your Honor, this recording is taken out of context. My clients were primarily concerned with the health and welfare of the newborn and were only trying to help Martha, who was suffering from postpartum illness. Eleanor Campbell is an experienced mother who raised 3 children and was only trying to take care of her grandchild. Words spoken in jest should not be taken seriously," Griffin continued. "In families, harsh words are sometimes exchanged, but they're based on love." Judge Morales frowned. From what I hear in the recording, it doesn't sound like a joke. Do you have any other evidence? Chen stood up again. Yes, Your Honor. We have photographs showing that Martha's room door was locked from the outside, and several other recordings. There's a consistent pattern. Chen played the next recording. Eleanor's voice resonated. She's emotionally unstable and can't take care of a baby. In the next recording, Richard was saying, Martha is mentally unstable, it might be dangerous for her to be with the baby. Judge Morales took notes, looking at Richard and Eleanor with a severe expression. The hearing continued for nearly 2 hours, with arguments repeated from both sides. Finally, Judge Morales delivered her conclusion. In this matter, I will maintain the protection order. Richard Campbell is prohibited from approaching within 100 feet of Martha Johnson and Avery Campbell. I also order the payment of medical expenses for Johnson's postpartum care and an interim compensation of $100,000 for emotional distress. Richard's face turned pale. Eleanor's lips trembled with anger. The main hearing will be held next month, Judge Morales continued. In the meantime, temporary custody of Avery Campbell is granted to Martha Johnson. Mr. Campbell is given supervised visitation rights once a week for 2 hours. As she left the courthouse, Martha, holding Avery tightly, expressed words of gratitude to her sister and attorney Chen. Thank you, really. It's not over yet, Jennifer said with a stern expression. They will appeal. Richard is boasting that he can fix anything with money and connections. In the parking lot, Richard tried to approach Martha. Martha, let's talk. This is a misunderstanding. We're family, right? Attorney Chen intervened. Mr. Campbell, have you forgotten the protection order? If you come any closer, you'll be arrested. Richard backed away, grinding his teeth. This isn't over. I won't let you take my child away. Martha answered in a trembling voice, Avery is not your property. She is a person. And I am her mother. As she got into the car, Martha gently kissed Avery's little cheek. It's okay, Mommy is here. We won't be separated by anyone again. Jennifer sat in the driver's seat and saw Richard's angry expression in the rearview mirror. It's going to be a long battle. But I won't lose, Martha said with determination. For Avery, and for all mothers in similar situations. As the car started moving, Martha received a notification on her smartphone. The account of her experience, which she had posted anonymously last week, was beginning to spread rapidly on social media. Hundreds, thousands of comments were pouring in, and women with similar experiences were beginning to speak up. Look, Martha showed her sister the smartphone. I wasn't the only one. Jennifer smiled. Your courage is giving strength to others. On a warm spring morning 3 months after the first hearing, Martha was having breakfast on the balcony of the apartment she had rented in another district of Miami. The wind from the sea gently touched her cheeks. In the baby chair next to her, Avery, who was growing healthily, looked around with curious eyes. Good morning, sunshine of our home, Martha smiled gently. With court-ordered living expenses from Richard, Martha had gradually resumed her online counseling work. The small but bright 2-bedroom apartment was the new castle for her and her daughter. The walls were decorated with watercolors she had painted and photos with friends from her support group. There was a knock at the door. Jennifer had come for a weekend visit. The relationship between the sisters had become stronger and deeper than before. Look. Jennifer showed her tablet. Your blog exceeded 100,000 views just last month. The blog, Reclaiming My Voice, based on Martha's experience, had become a sanctuary for women with similar experiences. What started anonymously was becoming her life's work. Every day, more women were speaking up, inspired by her courage. Counseling requests are increasing too, Martha said, sipping her coffee. I'm thinking of specializing in family relationship restoration, based on my experience. Meanwhile, Richard and Eleanor's lives had changed dramatically. The Campbell family's reputation had plummeted in the community, and Richard had lost several important clients at his company. Their actions had become widely known through social media spread and local media coverage. Eleanor's charity work companions also began to distance themselves from her, and she, who was once at the center of social circles, now spent her days in loneliness. Richard had a new girlfriend, but she too knew about his treatment of Martha, and recently their contact had become sparse. Even in the weekly supervised visitations, Richard struggled to build a relationship with Avery. He didn't even understand the basics of parenting. "The final hearing is next week," Jennifer said with a serious expression. "They've hired an expensive team of lawyers, but we have truth and evidence." Martha picked up Avery and nuzzled her fluffy head. "I'm not afraid anymore. No matter what the outcome is, we're together." That weekend, Martha invited women from her support group to a small party celebrating Avery's 3-month milestone. Her parents also came from afar, and the apartment was filled with laughter and warmth. "A real family isn't just about blood ties," Martha said to the gathered people. "A family is about relationships where we respect and support each other." Avery reached out to Martha and smiled as if she understood the words. The room erupted when her first words sounded like "Mama." It wasn't exactly, "I love you, Mama," but that's what it sounded like to Martha. She embraced her daughter with tears. "We are the best family," Martha's expression showed no more doubt. The sunlight streaming through the window illuminated her face, heralding the beginning of a new life.